Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm good to go.
Well, that's good. I see you're back in your hermit cave.
I'm back in the lair. Yeah, I'm going back and forth to school a lot now. I need to kind of resume being careful about if I'm going to be on campus. We've dropped all free tents on campus. We don't even require people to wear masks. They've stopped sanitizing. We've got summer camps have resumed. They've overrun our buildings. You know that whole deal, and they're
That's
just
pretty much everywhere.
yeah
I've
they're
noticed that COVID doesn't seem to exist anymore.
nope, it doesn't exist at all at Gardner Webb, and even in the best of times, bringing all those kids in for summer camps like starting a goat farm. They are the stinkinest bunch that I have ever been around in my. They come and stay all week and never take a bath, never, and get out and get wet and play in the yard and just roll. And they come in the cafeteria and you just have to leave. And then they let them use a room upstairs in our building to do arts and crafts. And our building, it's. I had the fan blowing past me to try to get the smell out of my office yesterday. It was so rank. It's a combination of body odor and like soured pudding. Oh my God, it's just brutal.
Oh, that just sounds
It's it
horrific.
it is horrific, and they're back with a vengeance. And that's the smellingest bunch I've ever been around. And then to make it even better, we host Carolina Crown, and everybody knows who that is. We did that at Olympic 1 year. When I got there, we already had a contract, and I swore I'd never have them again. That's the drum line percussion people, the
Oh,
college group
yeah.
that come
Band
in.
camp.
Oh my Lord, they wear hardly any clothes. They wear their clothes until they just rot off like cowboys. They are that's another whole level of stink that with that bunch. And at Gardner Webb it rains every day and they get wet and stinking every day. Then the sun comes out and it's 110 degrees and so. But being on campus with all these folks is not smart to go home. So I try to stay away from them, wear my mask, and then obviously I come here and sanitize. I'll do that before I go home, and try my best to not, if I get it, not to give it to my wife at least. So, but yeah, it's pretty rough where we are right now.
Oh,
Not fun. There's Dr. Kate, and she's my hero. She got Matt through. Um,
woohoo!
Boo. It would have been easier to pass a camel through the eye of the needle than to biblical than to get him through. Everybody and his brother has tried to get Matt through for 7 years. This was Matt's seventh year in the program. He finally got through though.
I think there needs to be a special award for
Well, I'm
him
telling you what,
at
that's the truth.
commencement.
That's it. That is the truth. I'm happy for him. He's at South Central in Pitt County. They're in Greenville, so I'm happy for him. And so, but yeah, he's been in and out. I think he's even been in and out of the profession for a while. So we're happy for him that he's finally through, and hopefully he can make a commitment and move on with his career now. It only took him 7 years to do a 3 semester 1 year program, so we'll see how that goes. But congratulations to both of y'all. I appreciate y'all getting that done. That's been a labor of love. All right. Well, we got some of our folks back. Let's see. Kitty, did you finish your OMA? Tell them what score you got.
A 4.
I see. There you go.
Yay!
Yay. See, that was fairly easy. You did it all on your own. Pretty quick and easy. So you can follow directions. You didn't need all that. You didn't need all that extra help and worrying and wondering and all that. You just did it and went on about your business. What is the Oz never gave nothing to the Tin Man he didn't already have? So you already had it. You just needed to have the courage and to step out and do it. So there you go. So Kitty's got hers knocked out and she's already completed her evidence for the summer.
Look at you going from the Bible to America.
I know.
Man, you are on it
I
tonight.
know. Now I'll go to Don Henley. Are you with me so far?
Uh-huh.
Life in the fast lane. That's what it's all about. It's life in the fast lane. You got to be able to shift gears, have faith in yourself, read the directions, and go on about your business, which leads us into the debrief of last week's case study. You've got to learn in life to trust your instincts. Know your business, though. You got to know your business. You got to know when it says may fail, that it can't mean for the semester or for the course, because that would be illegal. You've got to know that principal assigns grades. You got to know these things. You've got to put all this stuff together. You've got to trust your instincts, and you've got to know this case wasn't about anything other than an abuse of due process. That's all it was about. All the rest of that stuff was immaterial. None of that stuff mattered. What happens to us as administrators, and that's the reason why we have this case first, is we get paralysis by analysis. We factor in too many things that simply just really don't matter. When we boil it all down, what matters is do we protect and look after kids? Are we doing the right thing for them? And if we're not, we've got to stop it. What's the old joke? I went to the doctor, and I said, Doc, when I do this, it hurts. He said, well, don't do that. Stop it. That's the whole notion here is don't overthink it. Know your business, and have that sense in your heart that I'm going to do the right thing. And if you'll let that guide you, you'll be fine. We worry all the time about losing our house. Well, we can't let that means we got to learn our business. We got to know law, and we got to know finance. We got to know the things that matters. But it means that we also got to take action when we know things. Again, what is nonfeasance is when you didn't do anything when you should have. We had a student that came through this program that finished a year and a half ago, and he got a job summer of 2020. Now, I'm going to disclaimer: if I could have taught him 603, he could have still made the same mistake. I mean, I didn't, but I didn't get to teach that group 603. And less than a year on the job, he's out. He's out of a job, and he's ruined his career basically for non-reporting. He didn't do the right thing. He didn't follow through when a report came to him, and he got charged. Again, it was nonfeasance. He didn't do the wrong thing. He didn't do anything when a report came to him, and he should have. When a child is in danger and a report comes to you, you are legally bound to act. Which leads us to the cyberbullying for tonight. First thing you need to do on cyberbullying is make sure that you have gotten law enforcement involved, because they have the powers of subpoena and you don't for private. You can look at the devices that are on your campus, the laptop, I'm wiggle mine here that I'm working on, or the equipment. But what if it didn't? But what if the bullying didn't occur on a piece of school equipment? And that's when we get to the people who are trying to give their house away, who say, well, if it didn't happen on our equipment, then we don't have to be bothered with it. That is not true. That is a lie. That is a misinterpretation. If it affects your school, if it happens to people at your school, you are legally required to deal with cyberbullying. It's just that simple. I've got this. I'll start with the cyberbullying law tonight. And it gives all these conditions. And then I have people who say, well, that law was repealed. The only part of the cyberbullying law that was repealed is if you're in a Twitter war and you start losing, you can't claim that you're being bullied. If you entered in voluntarily into a Twitter war, and you don't, I'm gonna let that's Dr. Make sure I get the right one. Here we go. So here's the cyberbullying law. And so all of these things, internet chat rooms, electronic mail, instant messages, build a fake profile, pose as a minor, put things on the internet, intent to intimidate or torment a minor or the minor's parent or guardian. All of these things here, make false statements, cause people to harass a minor, copy and disseminate, sign a minor up for websites, sign up for electronic mailing lists, and it has all of these things here. And I have also on this document, again, it's under week 5 tonight. It has what, the bullying, but these are the laws. It has nothing about what machine was used or what phone was used. None of that matters. The only thing is if Dr. Maraglia and I are texting back and forth as we do from time to time, and then all of a sudden my feelings start getting hurt, I can't claim that she's cyberbullying me. If I voluntarily entered into a Twitter battle with her, then that's just on me. I should have been smarter than that. But other than that, so this notion that where the machine is, or we don't know if they actually were using their phone on our campus, that doesn't matter. And if you don't act and you become aware that this is happening, and you don't act, that's that nonfeasance part of malpractice or that negligence piece. There's three what negligence has 3: malpractice, misfeasance, malfeasance, nonfeasance. Malfeasance is malpractice. And you become aware of this. Somebody makes you aware. You don't tell the police. You don't take any action. You just claim, well, it didn't happen here. And no harm, no foul, go on about our business. We lost one of our Mels people in January this year. January into February. January he was suspended. February he was terminated. After less than 6 months on the job, he started July 2020 because he didn't follow through. And he was actually charged with a 2nd-degree child endangerment charge. That's real, folks. That's not a hypothetical. Again, I feel bad that I don't know that it would have been any different if we'd have had him in our class. But he came through our program. He was with another 603 instructor. As I told you, I normally don't teach 603 masters, but I wanted to do this one this summer with Dr. Caton and Dr. Maraglia, because they're going to be our new folks in the fall teaching this class. And I wanted to be with them and bore them one last time. But I normally don't teach this class. And so, but I'll tell you, I don't know that it would have made a difference. I'm not egotistical enough to believe that if the only thing that would have fixed that is if I'd taught him. No, that's not true. He made a decision. Now, understanding he was only 28 years old. This was his first job. He taught school for 5 years. And then he moved into the assistant principalship, had a tremendously bright future ahead of him. And had, and was only 28 years old, and his professional career is over. And even if it's adjudicated, even if he doesn't lose in court, he's already lost. He'll never get back in the school business again. I'm not sure what kind of job he'll ever get again. Construction or convenience store, one or the other. That's about, once you've had a charge like that, that's about all you can do in life. That construction, that neither one of those pays enough to provide for a family. And that construction, that's a young man's game. I don't know what's going to happen for him. I truly ache for him, but he made the decision not to act. And so cyberbullying is one of those that can get away from you really easily, because you don't see it. It may not even happen on your campus. It's not something that got brought to your office with 2 kids duking it out in the lunchroom. That's not what we're talking about here. It's electronic communication, and it's so easy just to, no harm, no foul. We're all good. I don't really want to deal with that. I'll just say I don't know where it happened, so I don't have to deal with that. None of that is true. You need to understand that that's the one that kind of slips in the back door on you. Now, the other part of this week is if a 10th grade female student comes to you again, first thing you do is go to law enforcement. You are not qualified to do investigations of sexual nature. The problem with sexual harassment is as soon as there's physical contact, it turns from sexual harassment to sexual assault. That's when you need to make sure that you have the police. Now, when I say you involve law enforcement, I'm not talking about you could pick up the phone and call 911. What I'm talking about is that you consult with your SRO. Do you want to get involved with this? I've had this report. I don't want to contaminate any evidence or in any way run afoul of your investigation. This is what I've been told. I am telling you, I am making this report to you. Where do you want us to go? The problem again with the verbal sexual harassment is too many times once you get into it, you find out, there was a physical component, a touch, a grab, an inappropriate something that was the piece of it. And then all of a sudden it changes from harassment to assault. And then and you've already started down that path of your investigation, and all of a sudden you realize I better put the brakes on and get in touch with the police. Well, that tends to make them angry when they weren't consulted up front. I know they shouldn't be, excuse me. I know they shouldn't be. Now, I'm not telling you that, but I'm just telling you in the real world, you launch into an investigation and you find it's a lot more than you thought it was to begin with, and then you go to law enforcement, that does not make them happy. They like to be in from the outset. Now, if they tell you, that's on you, go ahead with that one. Then you go ahead and follow your district's policy. Usually what you do first in that case is you consult your HR department. Usually that's the first thing that you would do. Your immediate supervisor, and then they'll send you to HR. So whoever your immediate supervisor is, you get in touch with them before you do anything, before you start calling people in and talking with them or any of that. You consult your immediate supervisor, and they usually will send you to HR, and they will walk you through the steps that they want done. Police first, supervisor, HR. Generally, it goes in that way. When you get a report of cyberbullying or actual sexual harassment, or that can lead to some kind of sexual assault. Now, before I turn it over to Drs. Caton and Maragda for their folder tonight, I had a situation, as I said earlier, I'm in Lake Lure tonight. I'm at my condo there. I told you, my full-time home is at Lake Norman, which is north of Charlotte, between Charlotte and Statesville. The very part of Mecklenburg County, the very northern part, is Cornelius Davidson, right on the line there. It's actually, the actual line cuts through the lake, and you're on the freeway there when you cross the county line. I live right there. We built a high school fairly recently in that area. The first high school been built north of Huntersville and forever. And so since Davidson High School closed back in the probably 60s, during all those closures and consolidation. So first new high school in the area in 40 years. It opened up. Just so happened that it opened up while I was still training administrators in CMS, and I had one, and I don't know why he did, but he did what he was supposed to do. He had a kid who was somebody saw some inappropriate images on his phone and a suspicion of cyberbullying. He confiscated the phone, involved the school resource officer. Next thing you know, it got really big and wide in that the kid was coaxing young girls at the middle school next door at Bailey Road, next door to Huff, was coaxing them to send him inappropriate pictures. He was then blackmailing these girls who were anywhere from, let's say, 12 to 14 years of age to have sex with him. And he was 18 years old. He was a student at the high school. It got really, really ugly. But the only way that this got started and this thing got found, of course, he's in prison now, was that AP didn't say, well, no harm, no foul, not my business, not my trouble. He confiscated the phone immediately, did the right steps, went straight to the police, didn't try to open the phone himself, knew that he didn't have a subpoena to do that, turned it over to the school resource officer, got a subpoena based on probable cause, and the story unfolded from there. Now that's in one of the more affluent neighborhoods in North Carolina. That's the kind of stuff that can happen. Cornelius is the wealthiest town in the state. So this just doesn't happen, at poorer places or that it can happen anywhere. That the point of that story is that can happen anywhere. So that you think, well, I work with in a more affluent area, this wouldn't happen. No, that's not true. It was an incredibly heartbreaking story for a bunch of young girls, 12 to 14 years old, what they were going through. Incredibly heartbreaking story. And the point of the story is that he followed the right way to do this. The procedure stopped this, and it was the tragedy was it happened to begin with. All right, Dr. Caton and Maraglia have uploaded their folder tonight. I'm going to turn it over to them. They've got that they can share their screen and go through their folder with you.
I just want to start off by saying that just bottom line is any sort of situation like this that you encounter, and you will unfortunately encounter things like this, you've got to make sure that you work with your law enforcement, because I remember very distinctly a few years ago sitting in a principal's meeting and our superintendent telling us we would essentially be fired if we tried to take care of any of these investigations on our own. And really and truly, once you have experienced something like this, you will understand it's to your benefit. I am glad to know that when something like this comes to me, I can go to our school resource officer, that I don't have to handle it by myself. Because despite the training and experience I've had, that's still not my job. That's not my line of work. I'm not the expert. The SRO is. And just knowing that I have that as a backup, and that just needs to always be your bottom line. Dr. Lamb said that, the young man he was talking about, who now is going to not be able to continue as a school administrator or as an educator, that just needed to have been his bottom line, that you don't handle that yourself and you absolutely act on it. Those two things right there should be some of your guiding principles. Don't ever ignore anything. Also in my district, if a bullying, whether it's cyberbullying or it's just the old-fashioned kids calling each other's names to their faces, whatever it is, we have a rule in our district that if it comes to you, you have to literally drop what you're doing and you have to start working on that particular situation. And we also have it set up in our district, and you may in yours as well, that parents can go online and report bullying. It doesn't have to just be in person. They have several different avenues, and they can also try to keep it as anonymous as possible if they're worried about retaliation for their child. So just, you need to be aware of that. You have to take it very seriously, because not only is a child being hurt, whether it's physically or emotionally, whatever, but you could end up being hurt as well by not having a job anymore, by not having a profession. And as Dr. Lamb was saying, with cyberbullying, again, getting law enforcement involved, one of the resources that is in the folder that Dr. Caton and I have for you is a further discussion of the law that Dr. Lamb shared. And you may not be aware that cyberbullying, if you have if you have someone who has done this more than once, it then also can fall under the whole stalking law situation, and they can also be charged with stalking. And now in our current time, that's taken very, very seriously by law enforcement. So you're looking at, it starts off as misdemeanors, but then you're quickly looking at some felonies, especially with repeat offenders. So it's a very serious situation. And he also mentioned, it didn't happen on campus, or it didn't happen using one of our devices. Again, that's irrelevant. The standard for cyberbullying is if it disrupts school in any way. And I'm going to share with you right now. Hopefully it will come up. This is the one I was telling you about with the North Carolina law, cyberbullying crimes. This was the document I was just referring to, but I want to show you so you can see specifically, at least in my district, and I'm sure it's very similar in yours. What I've included here is from our Students' Rights and Responsibilities Handbook, the actual rule regarding bullying and cyberbullying. And if you look in that second paragraph, down at the bottom of that paragraph, and I'm going to read this to you because you need to understand what the standard is when it comes to your involvement. In addition, as with any other disciplinary violations, any manner of bullying that occurs off campus may violate the Code of Student Conduct if it has a direct and immediate impact to the orderly and efficient operation of the school or the safety of individuals in the school environment. That is the standard. That right there says that's your job to investigate. Because even if they did it on their cell phones at home during remote learning, if it in some way impacts the school and their students at the school, so it does, it's your job to investigate and to work with your school law enforcement officer so that you can put a stop to this and you can protect the people who are being bullied. Again, like Dr. Lamb said, if it's and I promise you, once you become assistant principals, you probably won't have a month go by without some kind of crap like this showing up. But like a Twitter war, you're going to have kids going back and forth. That's a completely different situation when they're both in the wrong. But when you've got a child who's being bullied, they are being abused, and it's your responsibility to protect them. That's the bottom line. You've got to protect your children.
That is correct. Let me pause just 1 second, Dr. Maraglia.
Sure.
Let me do a little legal workshop here. Laws and policies are passed. Laws are passed in your state general assembly. Policies are passed in your state board of education. Then this is the legal precedent of how this works. So we have laws passed by our general assembly, by our lawmakers. We have policies passed by our state boards of education. Both of those are then taken, laws and policies, they are interpreted by your Department of Education, the South Carolina Department of Education and the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. They then take that law and policy and interpret it, and they publish out manuals to you as school districts and administrators. Are you following me so far? All right, now, as Dr. Maraglia pointed out, it is then the legal duty of the local board of education to adopt a code of conduct, as she just pointed you to, that says what we will do to follow these laws and policies. And so there is a manual. I'll show it to you in a few minutes, North Carolina Disciplinary Data Reporting Manual. Out of that, you have to build your local code of conduct. And so what she's telling you is, in Charlotte Mecklenburg, it says clearly here, you have to handle it because in that bigger state manual, it has the bullying and cyberbullying law. And since 2009, you are required to deal with these things, whether they happened on your campus or not. So that is the legal precedent of how we got there. So when students say to me, well, we don't have that in our handbook, we don't have to do it. Yes, you do. And if you don't, that doesn't alleviate you from having to do it. There is a bigger overarching manual that says you will do this. And if your local board didn't adopt and didn't have that specific language, it doesn't alleviate you from having to follow the state law and policy, is what we're telling you. Now, most handbooks that I've seen have this same thing in them, but even if they don't, it doesn't alleviate your responsibility. It's in the state manual. So you've got to understand that everything that we cover with you tonight and through this section, you don't get to choose whether you do it, or you can't hide behind, well, my district doesn't say to do that. It doesn't matter. Your state your legislatures and your governing bodies said you have to do it, and you can't go to court and plead ignorance. Well, I didn't know. That's what we're telling you here. Is there's that it didn't start at your local district level, these laws and rules. They started at your state lawmaker level and passed all the way down to the school level. You've got to understand how the law works. So that's my point, and I'll cover that for you later. So ladies, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go right ahead.
That's okay. And along with that, up at the very top of this document, I included some information just so you're aware as well, is that schools must teach appropriate online behavior, including interactions with other individuals on social networking websites and in chat rooms, and regarding cyberbullying awareness and response. So not only is it the school's responsibility to investigate and to address any claims of bullying, it is also the requirement of the school to teach children how to act appropriately online. Now, that's no different than teaching them how to walk down the hallway or how to act in the cafeteria. Again, we know they don't always follow the rules, but then that's where you also have to then step in as well. Not only have you tried to teach the right way to act, but when you have a student who breaks those rules, it is then your responsibility to address, work with law enforcement, and then at that point, you may get to the point where you have to levy some consequences. Does anybody have any questions about that? Because this is such a serious thing. And again, we're talking about protecting children, but we're also talking about protecting you and your profession. So I want to make sure that everybody is really clear on what we're talking about. So if you do have any questions, I want to give you a chance to ask those.
Dr. Michael, I have a question. So what, I guess in a situation where maybe a teacher has become aware of a situation, but the teacher does not report it to administration, what liabilities will we have as administrators at that point if we're never made aware of the situation?
Well, it's still going to be kind of a sticky situation because, you know, the bottom line is still going to fall with administration, but it is going to, you know, the teacher is going to be sharing that with you because you can't address what you are not aware of. But that gets into you talking with your teachers about the seriousness of this. It's no different than, you know, it's a state law that if you are aware of any sort of abuse occurring, whether it's neglect, abuse, whatever, it's not even just the law for an educator, but actually any person within the state of North Carolina who's aware of it, it is a law that they report it. And so making sure that your teachers understand, if you hear about this, you need to let us know so we can take care of it. We're not going to expect you as the teacher to handle it. Administration is going to handle it, but you're talking about getting into some real serious consequences there for the teacher as well, and trying to impress upon them the importance of making the school aware so it can be addressed and hopefully stopped. Is that you, Dr. Caton?
You can kind of hear me now.
Not so great. Sorry about that. Any other questions?
I want to comment while we're in transition here. I want to comment on that last question. You need to have critical conversations with your faculty about the same kind of a critical conversation that we had with you last week, and the critical conversation that we're having with you tonight, that your number one job is to protect children. You need to have that critical conversation with your teachers, because sometimes what I have seen happen is when pressed, teachers will say, it's not my fault that I didn't report this to school administration, although I knew. It's their fault because they don't want you to ever tell them anything like this. And that's why Dr. Maraglia said that's where it gets sticky, because they're going to say, well, no, I didn't tell her or him, but that's because they told us not to. And so sometimes, even if you haven't told them not to, did you tell them to tell you? So you have to make sure that every year when you do that opening school of the year, that opening work day, you got to remind folks of all these things, and that you are telling them you should come and tell us this stuff. Now, that don't mean that they will, but if you have done that, that will certainly help you in that charge of, no, I didn't go tell Dale because he always says, don't bring me bad news. So that's kind of the counter to that. Is yes, you may get saddled with that notion of, or that charge that, well, no, I didn't tell them, because they get mad at us when we tell them bad things. You've got to make it clear. You've got to have these critical conversations with your faculty that when you know things, I need to know things, and I'll deal with it. I won't put the burden back on you. And that's the second half of that. When teachers come and tell you something, it is now your problem.
Mm-hmm.
They have dropped it on your doorstep. Now, they don't get to complain about what you did. When you bring it to me, I will handle it. That's my job now. And you need to make it clear to folks that when you hear things like this, you need to bring it to me, and I won't put you on the spot, but I will pick up and go from there. All righty.
And then the other thing I was going to share with you are just some of the other resources that are in the folder. One thing that kind of ties into what Dr. Lamb was just saying is having that critical conversation with your teachers about what you need to know. And what I try to come at it as, it's not that I don't want you to bring me bad news. I would rather you go ahead and tell me so I don't step in a pile of it later on.
Yeah.
Go on and let me know what's happening. And so either we can work on it together, or if it needs to be me working on it and letting the teacher off the hook, that's what we're going to do. But one of the things there that I've shared with you is developing a positive school climate to try to prevent bullying and cyberbullying. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you're never going to have bullying in your school. Children have been bullying each other since the beginning of time. But there are some things that you can do with your students and your staff and even your parents to just have a more positive school climate. And one of those is keeping your avenues of communication open. That's one of the reasons my district has made it very easy now for students and parents to report bullying, is trying to keep the lines of communication open. So if it does happen, that they know that it's going to be addressed. Parents have been told, if an administrator does not address this right away, they're going to take it over our head. They know that we're to take it seriously, and we do take it very seriously, or at least we should be taking it very seriously. But these are some things you can do, and you can see here, number 2 is cultivating open lines of communication. Getting to know your kids. We find out stuff all the time from the kids. They love to tell, and they love to tell on each other. But they're not going to do that to the degree that you would like if you don't develop some relationships with them, learning their names. Don't just know the names of the kids who come into your office for getting in trouble. I can remember early on in my career, I was at a school where we had a lot of discipline issues. And I felt like the only kids I knew were the kids who got in trouble, because those were the ones who were in my office all the time. Go into the cafeteria and talk to the kids, spend time getting to know them, let them know that they can come to you about whatever problems they're having. And that's where you're going to find out your information more than anything else, is building those relationships there, setting up the anonymous reporting, have certain social norms on your campus that don't allow for that. Being able to build up the children and their confidence levels, and let them know that this is their campus, they need to take control, and that they're just going to have a positive outlook. So just some things here, again, enlisting the help of the students and collecting your data. That's a very important one. conducting regular assessments of students to find out what, what they have to say about bullying, where they see it going on, what problems they're seeing, and even asking them for suggestions on what you can do to address some of this. Because sometimes they can come up with some really great ideas that you might not ever think of because you're not a 13-year-old anymore. And most of us have kind of forgotten what it's like to be 13 years old, thank God. But just these are some suggestions here for you as you go into a school and trying to help your environment become a more positive place where students are, hopefully the majority of them are not choosing to go down this path. Dr. Caton, did you want to join in, or
I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay, I just wanted a couple of things just to tag off of. Also, parents do not like it when with the cyberbullying, and especially in high school, you'll have for me in high school, it's girls. Girls are I'm sorry, but they're the worst, teenage girls.
Yep.
And they'll, go back and forth. And when you have to take disciplinary actions, parents hate that because they'll say, well, this didn't happen at school. And you can see, but like, Dr. Maragli said, it's impacting our school, it's bringing it into school, and that's what happens. And so parents do not like that at all. But of course, the parents that, have brought it to you, or the students brought it to you, they're good with it, but the other parents usually are not. So just be aware of that as well. Also, like Dr. Maragli was saying, is making sure, you're present to build those relationships. Some of the things, of course, going to the plays, and I'll specifically say to those kids, hey, you did a really good job, or the band, concerts, or, JROTC presented, really, you did a great job. And they start to build that bond with you because they're the ones that are not going to be in your office all the time. I'll be very honest, my door is always open. I, honest to God, have a basket of candy on my desk for 2 reasons: to bring teachers in and to bring students in. So if I'm not in there, they'll say, hey, can I have a piece of candy? Absolutely. What have you done today? How's your grades doing? What are you doing? How's it going? Just, anything to bring some of them in, I do that. I'm on a lot of Facebook groups. And one of the Facebook groups I was on, it's called Principal's Principal. It said, one of the persons said, I'm thinking about being a high school principal, but I really don't like sports. Would it be okay if I just attended the band concert and the plays? And I didn't respond, but I wanted to be like, that's huge. These kids need to see you. They want to see you at the, basketball game. I hate basketball. I'm not gonna lie about that, but they want to see you, that's a really big thing for them. So that's part of the job, is the way I look at it. So I kind of went off tangent. I apologize.
No, but I think that's a valid point, is communication and relationships to get students to report to you. And a lot of that is through non-academic channels. I was asked 40 years ago when I was an AP, why I was going to community soccer games. And they said, do you like soccer? I said, I'd rather be whipped daily than to go watch a soccer game. But if our kids love it, I love it. That's how I'm getting to know them. And another little secret that I have for you, you should write this one down, is when you become an administrator, even at the AP level, the first thing you should volunteer for is to be a class sponsor. A lot of times we have class sponsors who are faculty members. You should volunteer to be a faculty sponsor. That's the best way to get to know the kids who don't come to your office for discipline. That's how you can get to know kids who aren't athletes, who aren't involved in activities, and who aren't the bad kids who come to your office for discipline. How do you reach that level of kid as well? You go to the ball games, you go to the band concerts, you go to the chorus, you go to dance, you go to all those things, and then you deal with your disciplined kids. But there's a big group of kids in the middle, that if you become a class sponsor, that you get to see them as well. They're not involved in all the activities, they're not involved in anything. They're the middle kid. That's how you reach that middle kid. And so one of the things that I did as principal is I made me and my APs, I was always a senior class sponsor, but I made me and my APs take one of the grade levels in high school and be the class sponsor, so that we tried to get to know more of the kids, the middle of the road kid as well. So, you get to know the upper kids, you're going to get to know them, you're going to get to know the behavior kids. It's that big group, 60% of the kids in the middle, that you got to find a way to make a connection with them as well.
And
And that's
also, when you do that, if there's going to be an incident, those are the kids that are going to come to you and give you that tip. They're
Yep.
going to say, hey, I just want to let you know something's not right, something's brewing. And they're the ones that'll really tell you the real story. And, so you want to have them on your, side. So, I totally agree. Like Dr. Lane was saying, is making those connections. For me, I'm at this parent drop off. I do corny things for them, for high school kids. I kid you not. I give them stickers sometimes, and they'll say like, be brave or have a great day. And when they don't, and that's your middle kids, right there, some of them. And I'll say to them,
Yep.
where's my sticker? What's going on? I don't know if any of y'all know what nabs are, but that's a Southern thing, the peanut butter. So we bought a whole bunch of nabs one time. We rode up there, have a nice and beautiful day, and gave them out as they got out of the car. And they look, high school kids look at you like, this person is crazy, but they love it. They won't admit it, but they love it. So, I do a lot of corny things for our students and for our teachers. So
That's down east, Dr. Caden.
okay,
Nabs.
Yep.
Nabs. Mm-hmm. Because I know
No,
what those are.
that's all over the world. Everybody in the
Yeah,
South knows
but
what a nab is.
do you call them that?
Yes.
Okay.
But now
Okay.
remember, I went to school in the East, so
Well, that's true. Okay.
I went to school in the East, so I learned. No, we in the West they've always been known as Lance Crackers, but in the East,
They're
because
nabs.
the Lance plant is in Charlotte. Everybody knows the Lance plant's in Charlotte, has been since the 1920s. The original one was on South Boulevard. You know where that building is, Dr. Maraglia,
Mm-hmm.
the old Lance building. Well, in the West, they're called Lance Crackers, but in the East, they're called nabs. So you got to have nabs.
With a Mountain Dew.
That's correct. It's the little things that matter.
Yes, it does.
It's the little things that matter. All right. So
I mean, the bottom line is you're going to be dealing with social media. You're going to be dealing with bullying. You're going to be dealing with cyberbullying. You just need to go ahead and get yourself prepared for it, but you need to know how to respond.
Yes.
That is the bottom line, because you have to respond. No response is not an option.
Well, it falls in line with the overarching theme for discipline. And
Correct.
the overarching theme is antecedent behaviors. We're going now we're going to get to a little bit of technical learning here. An antecedent behavior is a little thing that leads to a bigger thing happening. So in your activities, Dr.
Oh, you know what? Let me stop sharing.
I got you. All right. So in our materials, I'll close that one. In our materials for tonight, and here again is your code of conduct. Again, that code of conduct is written out of the state manual that comes to you, and I'll show you that in just a minute. But what I want to show you is I've got a slideshow. I did this in 2011. I was the keynote at the big DPI conference that happens at the Four Seasons in Greensboro. I guess everybody else must have declined that year, so I was the keynote that year for the statewide conference. And so this is what I did for that is identification of antecedent behaviors and development of prevention strategies, assist schools in decreasing violent acts on campuses. And so the notion here is the little things become the big things. And if you can stop it while it's still a little thing, you have a chance at stopping the bigger things that lead to violent behaviors on your campus. And unfortunately, that violent behavior a lot lately has manifested itself, unfortunately, in suicide. Kids killing themselves over being bullied, but also kids killing one another over being bullied. I won't use his last name, but I had an intern in Stanley County at Albemarle Senior High School. He was doing his administrative internship. He was on morning supervision at the front of the school when a kid walked up to a kid literally within arm's reach of him, pulled out a gun and shot and killed him. He turned the gun on Larry, our intern, and handed it to him, fortunately for Larry. But what came out of that is that kid had been being bullied. And he got to the point where he felt like the only thing that he had left that he could do was actually kill the kid who had been bullying him. That happened fairly recently at Albemarle High School. You can Google it. But more recently, and unfortunately more prescient lately, has been kids taking their own lives who are being bullied. But it doesn't start out at that level with kids killing one another or killing kids. It starts out at a much lower level. And so here are kind of the antecedents: bullying, cyberbullying, sexual harassment, sexting, gang activity. These are the things, the little things that lead to the big things. The the unwanted display, the inappropriate displays of affection. You let kids touch and kiss and hold hands and do that, and then before you know it, it leads to sexual harassment. It leads to sexual assaults and those things. Gang activity, little clubs, gangs. Before you know it, leads to weapons, drugs and weapons. That's kind of the currency in gangs is drugs and weapons. Also, a lot of sexual misbehavior, sexting. That's the stuff that led to all that indecent liberties with minor and rape. These are the ones. And so I have put together for you here. It's 82 slides long. Now, I'm not telling you it's a quick and easy read, but I have started with federal guidelines all the way through. I have developed a legal argument of what you have to do, what a persistently dangerous school is. These are the things that we have to avoid, or we will lose our job as school administrators. If we have too many of these incidents occurring 2 years in a row, you're out. Just like a low performing school. That's no child left behind policy. And right here is it's one incident for every 200 kids in your building at any level. That's so you've got to understand that if you let the little things become the big things, and you have a homicide, or you have assaults, rape, sexual offense, kidnap, robbery, if you have any of these things, if these happen, and you have more than 2 for every 1,000 kids that you have in your building, or 5 for every 1,000, 1 for every 200, 5 for every 1,000, it's the same ratio, and that happens 2 years in a row, you're out. You're done. Your career is over. You have to stop this violence in your building. You can't. The way to stop it is to stop the little things that become the big things. And here are the ones that count. These are the ones that count against you. And you say, well, I just won't report them. No, you have to report them. You'll get fired for not reporting them. You'll get charged. It's a crime not to report them. And so the whole notion here is, and I've got all these things, and I've developed this argument. I've got pictures of I jump into gangs and all those pieces, and then we go into sexual harassment, all the federal statutes that lead to all of those things. This is a one-shot deal on the whole notion of how you stop the little things to become the big things, and I have developed the legal precedent for each of these all the way through. Again, it's not quick. It's not a quick and dirty. It's 82 slides long, but this is kind of the definitive work on this in this area, not because I did it, but because I hired a criminologist and put this together. This is what you're seeing here is a combination of 5 years of work that I did, or that we did. This was not an overnight thing, but I've got the it has all of the statutes in this. It has everything that you need to know. So you need to give that a look. That's pretty important. You need to look at your code of conduct for your district. You need to understand that. You need to understand how to enter incidents into. Now, I can show you this. NCWise became Power School. This was the training manual that I had developed. It's got my name on it here, per me. There it is. That we use to train our administrators in districts. This is another one of those things we talked about last week. Just like when we talked about personnel, you need to go get trained how to do observations. You also need to get trained how to use Power School and enter incidents into Power School that occur at your school. This notion of, well, we do PBIS or we don't put them in, or we use Swiss. No, that's not the law. The law says you will enter them into Power School, and you have to know how to do that. Now, I know you say, well, I've seen Power School before. I have my teacher portal. The administrative portal is like 1,000 times deeper and wider and more involved than the teacher portal. And one of the modules in Power School is discipline reporting, incident reporting. We report by incident. And it's rather involved. And again, for security purposes, it's not menu driven. You have to know what screens to go through. And if you go through that manual I just showed you, which is, it does look much like Power School now, you have to know what choices to make. And there's a lot to know. So that's one of those things that you got to know what you don't know. And so generally, because of security reasons, your district will not train you in Power School in the administrative module for discipline reporting until you get your job. But a lot of times, if you can get hired early enough in over the summer, you can get that training. But generally that training will occur shortly. Some will occur in the summer, some will occur shortly after the fall session starts. Now, those aren't advertised. They're not open to the public. They're not open to people who are not administrators. The district does not advertise that training. That's something that you will have to talk quite confidentially with your principal about, is that I understand that I've got to, that I'll have to enter discipline. It's just like teacher observations. You got to hold up your end. I mean, until you can process discipline, somebody else has to process your part. You can't just process it and let the referral stack up on your desk. The state rule is 2448. If it's an act of crime and violence or police have to be involved, it's got to be in Power School within 24 hours, period, no matter when it happened. And if it's all other instances, it's got to be in there in 48 hours. Remembering that every school district in North Carolina and South Carolina is now tied to the state servers. That stuff it's updated every night. It's real time. That information has to be reported. What goes on in school in terms of disciplinary incidents, it has to be reported to the state immediately. And there are certain incidents that require that you involve law enforcement. You don't get to pick. And you say, well, Dale, I don't know any of this stuff. How do I know it? Well, the state manual. And so that's where we're going to go now. This is the know all, be all, tell all Bible of school discipline. So let me share my screen and we'll start with that. I'll just show you a screen in this one, what I'm talking about. You'll be confronted with screens like that you have no notion of where to go and what to do. That it's not intuitive. It's not menu driven. You will have to be trained to use Power School. Please remember.
Dr. Lamb, can I just interject one thing? Some counties do have a reporting system. Like in Pitt County, we have Educator's Handbook. We still have to go into Power School, but once we go into Power School, it just automatically uploads, and you do have to go through and submit, but you don't have to do as much. So find out if your county has a disciplinary system that automatically uploads. So,
Yeah, you may, that's why I said, you may go through a third-party vendor, as we call them, like Swiss or PBIS or others, but it eventually all ends up into this system. Eventually, so you need to know if your system employs a third-party data broker, basically is what that is, and that's addressed in the manual that you can do that, but that doesn't alleviate you from your responsibility of reporting. You need to find out if your district uses a third-party vendor. All right, so here it is. This is what it looks like. And as you can see, it has the governance piece, the State Board of Education, Department of Public Instruction. But what this does is it tells you what the value is, what the rules are. It has the terminology. We report incidents, not outcomes. That's one of the first mistakes that emerging administrators make is they think if I don't suspend that kid, I don't have to tell anybody what he did. I don't have to report it if I didn't. No, if two kids get in a fight, even if you don't do anything to them, you still have to report the two kids got in a fight. We report incidents, not outcomes. The consequence you assign them is an outcome or an action. But you have to report what happened. So under that logic, if Dr. Maraglia shot me and left town and we didn't give her any punishment, then I'm not dead. That's not the way it works. We report what happened, not at what happened as a result of. So authority to report, again, the General Assembly and school board policy right here. It tells you that this book contains the laws and the policies, the laws of the General Assembly and the policies of the state board. And then your district pulls a code of conduct out of this. But it tells you everything that must be addressed, everything that must be reported, all the things that count against you, and your persistently dangerous calculation that will cause you after 2 years of exceeding your total to lose your job. You go on the law. If you exceed your total for violent offenses for 1 year, you go on a watch list. The state comes out and does an audit, does all these things and checks on you. You go through an action plan on how you're going to fix it. And at the end of the second year, if your numbers are still above, if you still haven't gotten those violent offenses down, we reconstitute. What does that mean? That means we get a new bunch to leave the school. So you will either stop violent offenses or they'll get somebody else who will. That's how this works. And so here's all the things that I've told you about, all the things. Office of Civil Rights. We now use Power School reporting since 2014. We use Power School reporting to pull the Office of Civil Rights reports, and that means everything's got to be reported now. It doesn't matter if a kid sneezes too loud, we have to report that because everything, we pull that OCR report out of Power School now. We used to do it separately. During my years when I had to do it in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, when I was in charge of this, you have an assistant superintendent or your deputies in charge of this. We had to do 2 separate reports during that time, but now it's a one-stop shop. It all goes into Power School now. And right here, it has all the things. It speaks to what we talked about last week, zero tolerance expulsions. If you do that, that's illegal under OCR. You have to report yourself if you've done that. All the federal all those things, what must be reported. If you look at the list here, it'd be easier to figure out what doesn't have to be reported in Power School. As you can see, anything pretty much that happens in the building, I don't care how little, has to be reported in Power School. Because we're doing that OCR report out of it now, Office of Civil Rights. So here's the list of everything that has to be reported. What has to be reported to law enforcement? All these things have to be reported to law enforcement. And then it tells you how you go about in actual Power School about how you go about entering it all in. And it gives you scenarios. And it also tells you can edit instance, but there's also a log of those. So you don't go back and change things. That's a no-no. You lose your job if you do that. If you put it in as a gun and you go back later and take it out, so you think that won't show up in your data, that won't work either. And you can run reports out of this, and you can run it by ethnicity and offense type and those kinds of things. Again, we have to do, since we're now doing OCR reporting, we have all these different ways we can pull that data out. And then we have 3 different every incident that occurs in school that's a disciplinary incident is categorized in one of 3 ways. Either as a PD, that counts against your persistently dangerous calculation. RO, reportable offense, that means you got to tell the police. Or UB, unaccepted behavior. There is a caveat. There are 4 unacceptable behaviors because they carry a general statute number. That means they're a crime. We have to report them as well, even though they carry a UB prefix. I'll show you that. I'll show you that now at the end of the book here. All right, so we have, you see, UB communicating threats, but because it has a general statute number behind it, means it's a violation of the law. You have to report that. Alcohol, affray, disorderly conduct. We know we have to do alcohol because it has a RO, and there's one more, burning of a school building, or what is the other one? There's one more here that goes affray right here. Disorderly conduct, affray, communicating threats. There's there's a fourth one here. There it is, burning of a school building is what I said it was. There are 4 that even though they have a UB prefix, you still have to report them. But here's all the things the state says that should be covered in your code of conduct. All of these actions that a kid might do, these have to be covered in your code of conduct. They define what discipline infractions are. Now, they don't define what the punishment. Your code of conduct sets the consequence level. But they define these are incidents, these are behavior incidents. You must address them in your code of conduct at your local school board level. They also define who the victims are or offenders, and it can be, a teacher can be both a victim or an offender. If a teacher improperly restrains a kid, or in our case last week where a teacher illegally assigned a 0 tolerance expulsion, that has to be reported to the state, and the teacher is the offender. When I was talking about the teacher slapped the teacher assistant out on the floor, that was an assault, and she was the offender. If you have somebody come on your campus and creates a crime, they are the offender. It's not just for students. We also have incident sites. Now, I need for you to understand that incidents can occur all these different places in the building and the parking lot, school grounds, can occur off school grounds. That's what we're talking about. Cyberbullying can occur off school ground, at the bus stop, on the school bus, playground, media center. Now, you need to understand, we operate under the legal precedent of portal to portal. What does that mean, Dale? Well, it means very simply, you're responsible from the time a kid steps out their front door to the bus stop, at the bus stop, on the bus, at school, back on the bus, at the bus stop until they get back to their door. Now, I always get somebody says, well, what if they go to the soda shop with Jughead and Archie to get a malt and they didn't go straight home in the evening? No, we're not covering the malt shop unless it's cyberbullying. But we're responsible for what happens at bus stops and on the way to and from bus stops. Now, that's important in that we had a kid in Charlotte Mecklenburg who missed her bus, went to a city bus stop where an adult picked her up, took her off, and raped her. Is the school responsible? Unfortunately, we were. We had to report that as if that rape had happened in the front office. That's the way it works. And so it defines where incidents occur. The state does that as well. You can't say, well, our district says we don't have to report bus stop. That's not for your district to decide. This is the state manual. This is covered by everybody. This is for every school. Remember, this is pushed out to every district. You have to adopt all these standards for your code of conduct. Now you get to set the consequence level, but you don't get to decide, well, I don't want us to be involved, or I don't want us to be responsible for the bus stop. That's not your call. You're responsible for portal to portal. That's the legal standard. You have to report incidents occur, even if it's not just students, you have to report them. Here are all the different incidents that you have to report. Here are the categories. Here are all the behaviors. Here are the consequence types. And so you say, well, I don't have to report any of this if I don't suspend them. Nope. If you do any of these things, even to just having simply a conference with the student, if you get a referral on a kid, it doesn't matter what you give them. State doesn't care what you give them. That's, again, the level of consequence is determined by the local code of conduct. The state don't care what you do with it, but you got to report it and you got to be responsible for it. And so here's all the different consequences that you can assign a kid. And so you can see sent home early, detention, other, student oral, even if you just say to a kid, don't do that anymore, student oral warning, doesn't matter. You still got to report it. There is no out here. There is no way to slither out of not reporting things that happen. And here are the victim types. Here are the weapon types that go along with these. And here are the definitions of the crime and violence statutes. It's very specific. They get embarrassing when you get over here in the sexual stuff. So I won't read this to you, but there is no wiggle room here. You will follow these rules or you will be out of a job. The trick is to build relationships, know the kids, follow through, take care of the little things before they become the big things. And a lot of this stuff won't, you'll be okay. But it also has the reporting bullying here. And as it says, as I told you, since 2009, as Dr. Maraglia was referring to, all these things that have to be done. And your school has to have a reporting system that's anonymous, and you must have a bullying prevention program. Every school, that's again state law, must have that. And so I've got a copy of one down here. Let me switch. Right here's one. This is what you would expect it to be come up with, and this is only 16 slides long. But this would be what you would do at your school. You would have a bullying prevention initiative at your school. You're legally required to handle bullying, have a bullying prevention, and have a reporting system that's anonymous. That's what the law says that you have to have since 2009. So bullying is a big deal. It's almost a daily thing in our society now. So you can't shirk your responsibility on bullying or cyberbullying. Cyberbullying has just added another layer of difficulty for school administrators. It's just made it that much harder that you have to deal with stuff that may not have even happened on your campus. But again, when a kid brings a gun and kills another one on your front step, don't matter where the bullying occurred. They brought that to you. That will not go well. All right. So I have a lot of really good, and they have their folder. I have a lot of really good resources for you. If I can get my share to come back on here. I think I've covered about, everything that I want to cover. There's their folder. Just a couple of things at the end, not to be threatening in any way, but we got a lot of good stuff in here. But here's one. Title IX rules will shake up overall campus, will ramp up paperwork schools must do to comply with Title IX. This is fairly recent, within the last year. Title IX has been renewed again. It's been reaffirmed. And then here's one. The AP didn't do anything other than, again, didn't pass on the claims that the student made to them. Didn't act upon it because she said it didn't happen. Wasn't relevant. Didn't happen at their school. And so this one now, this lady ended up getting 2 years in prison over this. So you've got to understand that there's a lot more to this. This kind of stuff leaves the schoolhouse door and enters into the domain of the court system when you don't deal with these kinds of things. But again, number one, little things become the big things. You've got to address it. You've got to deal with it. You've got to communicate and know your community, your school, have open lines of communication, have all these things in place. And you can deal with it. You've got a shot, but ignoring it is not an option. Nonfeasance, just not acting, that's not an option. And again, this hit home for us within the last year. One of our Mels folks did not, because it was an elementary school, did not move it along, and he has lost his career now. So when students bring a report to you, you must act upon that report. My final story of the evening happened in a high school near where I live at Lake Norman, at North Mecklenburg High School, which was the only high school in the area for 40 years. An interim principal came in, and a 16-year-old girl came in and reported that she'd been raped on campus. The administrative team didn't say anything to the police department, undertook an investigation, and determined that it was consensual, that she was 16 years of age, not understanding the law. Go if you read those sexual infractions at the back of that handbook, that manual I just showed you. It says that the age of consent in North Carolina is 16 unless you're mentally incapacitated and don't have the mental ability to consent. She was self-contained exceptional children's program. She did not have the mental wherewithal to consent. Her mother went public, went to the local police department, who was which is Huntersville for there, and they threw the school under the bus, and we had to get a whole new administrative team. That's pretty much what happened there. You can't. They made their own determination. They were not qualified to do that, and so when it went to court, we ended up paying a bunch of money. But the notion was they weren't qualified to make that determination. They should have turned it over to the police as soon as it came in. But in order to, we didn't want the bad PR. Well, that's not your job. PR is not your job. Your job is to follow the law. I can tell you a dozen other stories that would, if you had hair, it'd fall out like mine. That's why mine fell out, that I had to deal with over my years of people doing the wrong thing for the wrong reason. I can't stop you from doing that. If you're not an ethical person, I can't stop you from that. What I always worry about is you make the wrong or you do the wrong thing, not because of the wrong reason, but because you didn't know any better. And that's what we're trying to do. We can't change who you are as a Christian or as an individual or as an ethical person. If you're going to cheat, you're going to cheat. But what I want to make sure is the rules. If you decide to ignore them or to cheat or get around them, that's on you. But you need to know what the rules are, and you need to know the consequences. If you get caught, you need to understand that you're talking about losing your house here. Most of the things that happen here are errors of omission. You just didn't know. But but the errors of commission, if you plan to cheat, I'm not talking to you. If you're planning to cheat, that's on you. We're trying to make sure that you know the rules so that you don't inadvertently break the law and cause yourself, unintentional harm. If you get caught and you did something inappropriate and you knew it, then you deserve to, you deserve whatever happens to you. But I'm always concerned that making sure that our folks know what the rules are and that you don't inadvertently break the law and cause yourself harm. All right. Dr. Caton, I'll go to you for a close tonight.
So I don't have anything really to add other than what we've already talked about is, establishing the rapport, know your laws, know what your district expects, and to follow up with everything. So I would definitely, just reiterate everything we've already said. So I'm not going to go into any additional detail.
Dr. Maraglia, you get the benediction. You get to close us out tonight.
All right, I would just say take some time and look over those last resources that Dr. Lamb shared with you, because as an assistant principal, discipline is going to be one of your primary responsibilities. And you need to get trained in Power School so you understand how that works. It's really not that difficult, but you do need to have that. But you need to understand, right now you don't always know what you don't know, but you need to start looking over these resources, keep them where they're always handy so you can refer to them, because ignorance will not be a defense.
That's it. All right, housekeeping items. If the link to the manual, it works sometimes and it doesn't, but that North Carolina Disciplinary Data Reporting Manual, you can Google it. If the link that we have in Blackboard doesn't work, those go dead every once in a while. That's your Bible. That's the one you really need to spend some time with. Now, 1 week notice on case study. Case study 2 is on finance. Identify the central theme. The central theme, the question for the case is it legal for the superintendent to manipulate money for whatever reason, whether it be equity or whatever? Can the superintendent manipulate state, federal, or local funds in order to move varying amounts of money to different schools according to their needs? That's the central issue of that. Don't get sidetracked by, oh, this is a good reason to do this, or it's not a good reason, according to which political side of the coin you're on. The spectrum is yeah, this is a good idea. No, it's not. Don't get involved in the political part of that. That's just to distract you. We're looking at always, our case studies are legal case studies. Is it legal for him to move federal, state, and local money? That's what we're looking at. Look at the Leandro case. Read what the case held. Do some legal research into school funding through the lens of the Leandro case, which is a national case. Although it happened in North Carolina, it is the national school funding case. Make sure that you understand. We're looking at this not with our hearts, but with our heads from a legal perspective. Not, well, the ends justify the means, that it's such a good idea to do this, or no, we shouldn't because this is a bad idea. Look at the legal. Is it legal what he's doing? That's your charge for next week. All right, so we meet next week for case study 2, the superintendent's message. Again, same thing. You'll have a presentation. It should go quicker. It's not nearly as long a case. It shouldn't be as involved. This one should be easier if you know now to look at this from the legal and ethical perspective. And don't get sidetracked by all the things that they throw at you just to confuse you. Cut to the chase here on that. All right. Questions for next week or questions for tonight? I saw a lot of good work this week. I like Mary's response. If Mary's with us, I don't know if she's with us or not. Didn't see her. No, there's Mary up to the top right. I like Mary's response on cyberbullying. Mary knocked it out of the park on that. If you want to look at a good one, see Mary's response. Thank you, Mary. That was really good. All right. Again, congratulations to Kitty. Kitty pulled the first 4 of the semester on the OMA. We're doing great, folks. Just 5 more weeks. We're halfway through. Hang in there. We'll make it. Cyrus, got some good work from Cyrus again this week, and some thought and a good reflection on the case study. I'm just looking at the folks here, and so again, Cammie, thank you for yours. Everybody, good job this week. Todd, Michael, Drew, we'll see you all next week. Have a good week. Thank you.